Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the program. It's your host, Danny Haifong. As you can see, I am joined by Scott Ritter, former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer and UN weapons inspector, and former CIA analyst Ray McGovern. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you both?
Okay,
Good.
under the circumstances.
Yeah. Well, the circumstances are what we need to get to. Of course, the latest situation is that the Trump administration, the United States, is on a collision course for war with Iran after weeks of so-called protests and riots inside of Iran. The United States, under Donald Trump, has, according to the Cradle, essentially is gearing up for an attack on Iran. Informed sources in Washington, according to the Cradle, say the decision has effectively been made, with only the timing and execution still pending. And Scott, I want your comment on this. There are two major challenges, according to the administration sources: an unusual absence of aircraft carriers within the U.S. CENTCOM area of responsibility, and the vulnerability of U.S. bases to potential Iranian retaliation. So, Scott, first, what is going to happen here? The Trump administration, Donald Trump himself, has said he is ready to bring in help to the so-called protesters. And now we are hearing that there's an imminent strike, but no aircraft carriers. So how does this happen, and why is it happening? And I know you've been talking a lot about the Trump administration's essential lawlessness. This comes in a very, very deep context. So to you.
Well, first of all, I want to point out that Congress, the Senate, just passed a war powers resolution saying the president couldn't go to war in Venezuela without their permission. I think it's high time they pass a war powers resolution to preempt anything this president might be doing. We don't need carriers. This will be a cruise missile. This will be a B-2 bomber. F-22, F-35 type strike. So the lack of aircraft carriers doesn't surprise me. In fact, it makes sense, because if we are dumb enough to attack, and I'll get to that in a second, any aircraft carriers in the area would be sunk. The Iranians have the ability to reach out and touch with ballistic missiles that can't be shot down. And so there's no reason for them to put these assets in place. The other thing that's going to happen, though, is that the American facilities in the region are going to get waxed. It's just preordained. And there's nothing we can do to stop it, which leads to the question, why are we doing this? The Israelis have always hinted that they had something else up their sleeves. When they did the whole drone thing, that was a huge network, took decades to install, and it was rolled up. It's dead. But the Israelis were like, we got something else. Well, they just shot that bolt. Well, that something else was the Israelis had created the ability to mobilize significant anti-demonstration riots. Now, what the Israelis were hoping is that they would pull the trigger on the riots, and while the riots reached their peak, the United States would bomb, command and control, leadership targets, basically decapitate the regime or neutralize the regime, neutralize security, and create the conditions for this unrest to spill over and become regime change worthy. That's done. That's finished. I don't care what you read on social media. The revolution is over. The Iranians have won. They've rolled it up. The Israelis shot their bolt, and the United States is too late to the game. So I think right now there's a lot of posturing by Trump to try and intimidate Iran to the negotiating table, but I don't think the Iranians are going to take that bait. Look, we have a madman in office, and there's no way that you can apply logic to the methodologies there, but he missed his opportunity. The window of strike, and you just listen to the rhetoric of Lindsey Graham and all the other people that are plugged into the Israelis. They're like, strike now, baby, strike now, baby, strike now, baby. Do it. Help these poor people in the streets. Well, Trump didn't strike. And the Israeli card has been played, and the Iranians trumped it. So I hesitate to say anything, but I'm not putting money on the United States bombing Iran anytime soon. At least not the attack that Trump is talking about is a regime change attack. It's an attack to kill Khomeini, kill Pezeshkian, to kill the Republican Guard, a similar attack that the Israelis did in June 12th. But the Iranians aren't asleep at the wheel this time. I think you'll find that their leadership is buried in bunkers, scattered, with plans in place for, redundancy. And the other thing is their ballistic missile forces now are fully mobilized and ready to strike. And these are the good stuff. They used all the bad stuff earlier. They got the good stuff now, and the good stuff will come down day one, and it will take Israel off the map, and it will take American facilities off the map, and thousands of Americans will die. And Donald Trump will have to live with that legacy. And I hope that Tulsi Gabbard, who was cut out of Venezuela, is sending him repeated memos saying, don't do this. We'll see.
Yeah, well, Ray, I want to kick it to you, but let me first play what Donald Trump said exactly in the lead up to this strike threat.
Business went through the roof.
You said to Iran this morning that help is on the way for protesters. What did you mean by that? What kind of help?
You're going to have to figure that one out. I'm sorry.
How many people have been killed in Iran?
Nobody's been able to give me an accurate number. I have heard numbers from everything's a lot. One is a lot. But I've heard numbers much lower, and I've heard numbers much higher. We'll be.
So, Ray, that's what Donald Trump is saying. And so anything that you want to respond to with regard to what Scott said and Trump's threats of a strike?
Well, it may be not very sensible to put any trust in our professional military, but I wonder if they want to see their bases decimated. I just wonder if they'll go the 10th mile, so to speak, for Israel. I guess it's worth reminding people this has nothing to do with U.S. national security. Iran is no threat to the United States, never has been. This is all for Israel. Now, it all depends on whether Trump is so wedded to Netanyahu, not only for genocide, my God, not only for forced starvation, but for sacrificing U.S. troops as well as other troops in a fool's errand. They tried it before. They can't even justify it by the so-called existence of a nuclear weapon. There isn't any. They're not working on a nuclear weapon. And when Tulsi Gabbard said that, she got hit on the cheek there, saying, you don't say that anymore, and got marginalized. So I hope Scott is, I hope similarly to Scott, that she'll be able to weigh in here. And I'm relieved to hear Scott say, and I've felt for some time, more hope than maybe hope being father to the thought that the U.S. would, that however mercurial or unpredictable Trump is, that the U.S. military would tell him, look, we're going to have these kinds of losses, and, there's a good chance that Israel will be, what should I use? Obliterated. Israel, Netanyahu, obliterated, and their only last chance in extremis is, you know what, Mr. President, a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, and Scott, the Gulf countries, they are warning, especially Saudi Arabia is warning the Trump administration to not strike Iran because of the possible retaliation. Is Saudi Arabia right to do this? Is there a possibility here that the United States could strike Iran and not suffer consequences, because Iran has said that they will and they are prepared for a war, and they're preparing for war with the United States, especially in mind? What's your thoughts about this?
Again, this isn't Iran's first rodeo. They fought a 12-day war back in June. They're fully cognizant of everything. They have a very capable intelligence service. One of the things about the 12-day war is that it removed uncertainties from the equation. Prior to the 12-day war, would the United States pull the trigger? Would Israel pull the trigger? Would it be a big strike, a little strike? What questions asked and answered? Israel tried to assassinate the Iranian leadership with the assistance of the United States. And for 12 days, Israel attempted to pound Iran into the Stone Age. Unfortunately, Iran had a counterpunch, and the Israelis ended up having to call it quits and beg the United States to intervene. And that's why the war stopped. But there's no more questions. I mean, I can't imagine an Iranian intelligence officer getting up in front of his command and giving out courses of action that's, start with the premise. We're uncertain what the United States and Israel seek to achieve here. And we don't know that if they initiated military action, if it would be a decisive blow or would it be hybrid warfare? No, he'd be fired on the spot. You have to come in and say, we know exactly what they're going to do. It's a decapitation strike designed to empower the protesters. Now, we've crushed the protesters, but be prepared for a decapitation strike across the board. We need to be ready for this, and we need to be ready to launch on warning. We can't just be sitting ducks. They'll be coming after our launchers. So the moment we get an indication aircraft are in the air, we need to launch, and we need to launch everything. What we don't launch will be at risk. I mean, these are the kind of things, the factors that go into military planning that are no longer in question, in doubt. And so I think the Iranians are very professional. They understand the region. They understand what's at stake here. And time is not on their side. They need to knock Israel out of the fight up front, and they need to give the United States the biggest possible bloody nose there is, in hopes that the United States takes a step back and says, we don't want to continue this. So we'll see. Again, this is all speculation here, but from a professional standpoint, I just can't imagine an intelligence officer giving a briefing to the Iranian command that didn't list options 1, 2, and 3 as the same. They're going to blow us away, so we need to blow them away sooner.
Yeah, and Ray, we have the president of the United States right now openly calling for regime change and openly supporting forces of regime change. This is what he put on his Truth Social. Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions, save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price. I've canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way. MAGA, President Donald Trump. Ray, your thoughts on this situation as it is cascading and really descending into something quite ugly?
Is MAGA make Iran great again? Is that what MAGA stands for?
It could be, but there's another state that starts with an I, Israel. Anyway, but that's that's neither here nor there. But yes, I think he is actually referring to Iran here.
This is juvenile stuff. The problem is that it is Trump, and he is the president of the United States, and he does have his fingers on the nuclear codes. My God. That's why everyone from Putin to Xi and other sensible people try not to enrage him, try not to give him any chance to retaliate against them. Now, to predict what he's going to do is sort of a difficult chore because he is by definition unpredictable. But the Iranians have made it very clear that they're prepared, and I think Scott is quite right. If Trump prevails and he gets this General Dan, what is it? The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Raising Cane.
Yeah, Dan Cane.
Oh,
Raising Cane. If he gets Cane, I've watched Cane now. I mean, he's very glib and he knows exactly politically how to act. But in terms of the commander that you need, in terms right now, that would be able to say, Mr. President, this is crazy. We're going to lose this many troops. I don't know if he's that kind of guy. So that's all I'll say on that. It's come to a head. But let's hope, let's expect that some will raise the issues and say, look, Mr. Trump, this is really a bad idea. Venezuela, bad idea, but this is a really, really bad idea.
All right. I mean, we just got into 2026. Donald Trump, the United States, conducted that war crime, the kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro. Now we are here, Scott. We are here talking about the threat and the preparations the U.S. is making toward an attack on Iran. And U.S. CENTCOM came out today, as of January 13th, talking about this new air defense operations cell in Qatar, talking about how U.S. and regional partners opened a new coordination cell at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar to enhance integrated air and missile defenses on January 12th. Scott, what does this mean? And how much does this have to do with these preparations with Iran, do you think?
I think it has everything to do with the preparations with Iran. It's posturing. Let's just be honest. Air defense capability is the air defense capability that you have, the technology. No amount of operation cells and coordination and, integrated this, integrated that is going to change the fact that we don't have air defense systems capable of protecting our facilities from concerted Iranian ballistic missile attack. We can weave together THAAD, Patriot 3, we can weave in Aegis, and it's all, it won't work. People need to understand that the Iranians have operationally an Oreshnik type missile. It's not the Oreshnik. The Russians certainly didn't give it to the Iranians, but the Iranians, people who study the Oreshnik and the hazelnut aspect of it are rods from God. It's not the first time people have been talking about rods from God. And, the Iranians are fully aware of this technology, and they are very smart. They are certainly able to replicate the exotic ceramics that go into, making these things, the materials. My point is that this is purely posturing. This is designed to assuage the fears of the Gulf Arab states up until the moment. Remember, the Trump administration can't be trusted on anything. They're liars, straight up liars. Can't be trusted on anything. And so what the Trump administration does is deceive people up until the last minute. Like Iran, for instance, we're willing to have negotiations. Why don't you think about it over the weekend? We'll get together Monday. Oh, I'm sorry. Did Israel attack you Friday night? Too bad. Hamas, hey, we want to have negotiations about what's going on over there in Gaza. Why don't you all come to Qatar and we'll talk about it? And then, of course, they let the Israelis try to kill them. Vladimir Putin, hey, buddy, we're talking to you about Zelensky. I got Zelensky here. Hey, thanks for calling. Can you hold on the line for an hour? I'm going to go pass on this. I'll get right back to you. Don't move. And then they fire 91 drones, try and take him out. Nobody trusts the United States anymore. This is not a serious thing. First of all, with planning, you don't get together and have a master plan right off the bat. People get together, they talk, they come up with ideas. Those ideas then have to be turned into reality, meaning you have to put assets on the ground that link up. There has to be training involved, coordination, logistics, sustainability, command and control procedures, sharing of classified information. All this stuff goes in. It doesn't happen overnight. So for all the people out there saying Trump's going to attack Iran tonight, that means that whatever they're doing in Al Udeid is meaningless. Because A, they don't have the assets, but B, even if they did, they don't have time to actually turn it into something that can manifest itself realistically on the ground. So this is just posturing on the part of the Trump administration. It's meaningless. Trump can't be trusted. The United States can't be trusted. It's a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, and Ray, do you buy that, there's this narrative that J.D. Vance is pushing for diplomatic talks with Iran throughout all of this? But as Scott just said, the Trump administration has been using the word diplomacy, the so-called active diplomacy, as a weapon Do you buy that this is the case right now?
That's an easy one. No. What I don't buy is the notion that JD Vance or anybody else is working behind the scenes. This all comes from our media, from Washington Post, the CIA asset, which is called the New York Times. You can't believe anything you read there. So, no, I don't know if there's any stock to be put into what J.D. Vance said, given the fact that he lies about internal things too, saying that women in Minnesota deserve to be, or whatever he said about it was just awful.
Yeah. Well, maybe Scott, you can elaborate on the context here, because we just had the Trump administration conduct this illegal operation to kidnap Nicolas Maduro, claiming victory in Venezuela and total control, even joking about how Trump is the head of state in Venezuela. But now suddenly we're here talking about an attack on Iran as these so-called riots, these so-called protests, as you call them, these riots, have, according to Israeli and U.S. Western media sources, they're still happening. They're still big. And the Trump administration is saying they support them. But many are saying that they've actually, as you said, died out. So what is the context here? Why is the Trump administration in this seemingly chaotic foreign policy situation now diving deep into the Iran morass?
Well, I don't think Iran was on their radar, to be honest. Excuse me, I just have to get a shout out to Berg Sprangari. Scott Ritter is an idiot. Thanks, buddy. Just take that with a grain of salt as I respond. But my dogs actually concur with me. They think I'm an idiot as well. And they're probably more correct than you are. But the point is, after Venezuela, Trump said that Greenland is on our front burner. The invasion and occupation of Greenland, we're going to take this over, Fortress America, and all this. But Bibi has his own plans. And I think, the Mossad has been, when you prepare something like what's been ongoing, and let there be no doubt, this is a 100% Mossad operation heavily supported by the CIA. But the Mossad has spent decades cultivating these ties through the MEK, through the Shah's son in exile, through Kurdish groups, through the Baluch, through the Azeris. One of the largest Israeli Mossad intelligence stations in the world is in Azerbaijan. Why? Well, because they're going across the border into Iran to work up those Azeris. The Israelis are everywhere. And, so they've been working on this, building up these assets, building up these cells, because these operate in cellular fashion, training them on communications, training them on operations. And, the cells, what my take on just reading in between the lines here is that you had cellular structure, meaning that you had significant assets on the ground whose job is similar to that of a special forces team, meaning that they are there, and when the time comes, they will train an indigenous capability to act on them. And they rapidly expanded their forces, and they gave them, modern communications. And there's some interesting things there. The Iranians, when they started grabbing the phones of all these people, found the same message from a Farsi-speaking woman, Israeli, instructing them on what to do if captured, what you need to say to protect yourself, protect the system, and all this stuff. They found Starlink, receivers. The Russians gave them the secret to Starlink, with Russia has figured out, of course, fighting Ukraine. And the Iranians were able to jam and shut down, intercept, track, reverse engineer Starlink. And these cells were all rounded up, and they're gone. I love how people are so desperate now that, it's just a huge bot farm out there, trolls, who just spread the same message. It's not because they're getting truth from Iran. They're being directed by the Mossad via MI6 Benjamin Netanyahu is bragging about, I think, Project Esther, he called it. They spent
Right.
hundreds of thousands of dollars. God, I'm on the wrong side. $7,000 a tweet. I could have had a great Christmas.
Yeah.
But I'm basically it seems like I have to pay money to tweet. But the Israelis were funding and they're increasing their budget. But the point is, the Israelis are managing right now a PR campaign because they have no contact with their assets. They're all dead. They're all captured. Tomorrow they're going to be hung by the neck until dead. It's going to be the greatest mass execution of traitors since what the Soviets did to the Nazis in Kiev in 1946. I look forward to it. I'm sorry, Ray. I know you're a good Christian, and Danny, you don't promote violence. Hang them by the neck until dead. These are Mossad thugs who burned a 3-year-old child to death and created violence that killed many, many innocent people. These aren't innocent activists. Some of them may have been sucked in, but they all knew what the hell they were doing. They were all taking direction from, people that are working directly for the Israelis. And the Israelis have their number. The Iranians have their number. They rolled them up. And also, let's just talk about these deaths. 12,000 people are supposed to die over the course of 2 or 3 days.
Scott, Barry Weiss is saying 20,000. The number just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Continue.
Getting bigger. Modern combat. Do you understand how many live rounds and machine guns and bombs and aircraft would have to be employed to generate that kind of death count? We're talking about full-scale war. The bloodiest day in Vietnam didn't come anywhere close to that. Hell, the Battle of the Bulge, you didn't kill that many Americans. And the Germans are coming in with aircraft, tanks, bombs, machine guns, infantry assault, the whole thing. And now we're told, no, that the Iranian security forces are just gunning them down in the streets, 12 to 20,000. It's 100% crap. Excuse my language. Maybe hundreds. I don't know. The Iranians apparently lost their, the Iranians are very restrained. What do you mean restrained, Scott? They're one of the most brutal police. The Iranian government actually loves the Iranian people. And the Iranian president is actually very sympathetic to opposition forces, legitimate opposition forces who voice concern about economic conditions. Hell, this guy took the hijab away. I don't know if everybody woke up to this fact, but you walk around Tehran today and the women ain't wearing the hijab. And there's no cops around beating them up because the Iranian president said, we have to adjust to the times. And so, this whole thing, the whole thing about that woman, burning the portrait and smoking, she's Canadian, it was done in 2022. It's all a lie anyways, because there's no protest about taking off that job. It's already off. The Iranian government already conceded on this one. They've conceded on a whole bunch of other things. Unfortunately, through those concessions, they create a window of vulnerability because then a fifth column can be, extrapolated from this newly energized mass of people. You can say, but it could get better if you get rid of them. That's what the Israelis did, passed out money, promises, the whole thing. They recruited a whole bunch of people. These are traitors. They committed treason. Again, I'm just all you good, warm, hot-blooded Americans out there. What would you want done to Americans who worked with, I don't know, pick the worst country in the world out there, Israel. Oh, wait, whoops, we can't say that. Worked with a hostile country to the United States, not to just collect information, but to come to the streets, burn down your police stations, burn down your fire departments, murder your women, murder your children, rampage through, basically declare war on your country. And now you caught them, and you got them dead to rights. There ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about this. They got the instructions right there. They got the orders, how they implemented it. They got the cache of weapons. They got everything. What would you do, America? You'd say string them up by the neck until dead. Now, people will say, well, we have due process, and we do. And we don't string them up by the neck until dead anymore. But we could. And with this president, you never know. Hell, he'll shoot a 37-year-old woman in the face just for trying to avoid having a nice guy come in and take control of her car. We already are an occupied country. We already have American citizens being detained illegally, murdered illegally. I'm just telling you right now that if the president of the United States, this president, was faced with a similar situation, we'd be executing those people in very short order. The Iranians have been doing this for some time now. They're fed up. This isn't the first time Israel has organized large-scale demonstrations. Raisi, when he spoke in September of 2023, I believe, at the UN, said that the unrest that followed the tragic death of that Kurdish girl in police custody, he said that put the greatest pressure on the Islamic Revolution since the revolution. It was a very dangerous time, he said. They exploited all of the fractures in Iranian society, and they came at us hard. He said, but the Iranian people rallied around and they were able to restore this. Notice what I said. The Iranian people rallied around. The Iranian government didn't violently suppress these people. Those cells still were there. They were supposed to rise up in the 12-day war in June, but the decapitation didn't happen, and the Israelis held them in reserve. But the Iranians know this stuff. All those drone operators they caught, they're dead. They got hung, as they deserve to. And now they've caught all the people who committed murder on behalf of Israel. Israel just lost the lion's share of its assets. And this is why Israel's panicking right now, because if Trump doesn't attack, then Israel won't be able to do this again. This was supposed to be the big move. This is supposed to be the regime change. The theocracy is not supposed to exist very soon. Now Israel's looking around saying, America missed the window of opportunity. It's too late. And, but the Iranian government finally, I believe, woke up to the fact that you have to eradicate these cells. You can't play soft. You can't slap a wrist. You can't hang a few. You have to kill them all. And I think that's what they're doing right now. And I don't think the Iranian people are losing too much sleep over this. The Israelis are, and the pro-Israeli faction in the United States are losing a lot of sleep. But, they've had large-scale demonstrations in Iran with millions of people in the street demonstrating for the regime. It's over. The Israelis lost.
Yeah. Ray.
Yeah, it just brings to mind the timing again. Netanyahu was in Mar-a-Lago over the holidays, right? It was after that things got hot and heavy, it seems to me, if memory serves. I don't know exactly, but I'm wondering how much this had to do with Netanyahu feeling he needed a really big boost, okay? He was almost in extremis because Gaza is not going so well, okay? So he needed something to divert attention, and he needed Trump to show that Trump is solidly behind him, okay? Now, he brought that home to him. Trump is solidly behind me. So the way things have now gone down raises, in my mind, the specter that, well, if it is in extremis for Netanyahu, what's he going to do now? How does this relate to the situation he faces internally and with respect to Gaza? My worry is that this would make it even more likely we would go off half-cocked, and that perhaps our president would support him for similar reasons, to divert attention to what's going on elsewhere. So I don't know, but it raises hair on the back of my head. The other thing that hasn't been mentioned, of course, is Russia and China. This is not Venezuela, folks. This is right on the Russian border, China. Now, what are they going to do? They have an economic stake there. Oil is really big, especially for China. They need it through the Persian Gulf. So, we used to talk about, well, will you stand idly by when this happens? I don't think they're going to do that anymore. Chinese are very cautious, but the stakes are very high. And I think that both China and Russia, having discrete separate contacts with the United States, subliminal ones, but really, really better ones than the Biden administration ever had, that they're talking to Trump and saying, "Look, you're in trouble enough. We're winning in Ukraine. We don't need something right on our border. Ukraine is bad enough. So think about it. Think about it real strongly."
Yeah, and great points, right? Scott, I wanted maybe we can spend some time now talking about the consequences. As we are talking, more and more news is rolling in, and I think it would be helpful for the audience to know what the consequences of a war with Iran would be, because now we're even having, and this is surprising to me, this just broke. Israeli and Arab officials have privately suggested the U.S. hold off on Iran strikes. Israeli officials have suggested the Trump administration delay large-scale strikes until the Iranian regime is even more strained, while one Arab official said there's a lack of enthusiasm from the neighborhood for American military action right now. But Scott, there are people who are very enthusiastic about a war with Iran. Here was Lindsey Graham in front of Zionist donors, actually, as the announcement that Trump might attack Iran imminently. Here's what he said.
I don't know what, but this might be the night. It's just a matter of time now. It's just a matter of time. Why is it just a matter of time? And you know what I'm talking about, don't you? This tyrannical regime needs to end. We need to end this for the good people of Iran and for our own selves and the people of Israel. We need to take this guy down. He needs to leave standing up or laying down. I don't care. He needs to go. And if we can pull this off, it'd be the biggest change in the Mideast in 1,000 years. Hamas, Hezbollah, gone. The Houthis, gone. The Iranian people, an ally, not an enemy. The Arab world moving toward Israel without fear. Saudi Israel normalized. No more October the 7th. I haven't slept or eaten in 3 or 4 days.
So he is that enthusiastic, Scott, about this that he hasn't eaten or slept in days. Scott, talk about what the consequences of a war with Iran, what would they really be? It seems like many Gulf countries, even some in Israel, which is shocking to me, are very much concerned about the consequences.
Israeli infrastructure won't exist when this is done. The Iranians made some clear targeting messaging near the end of the conflict, striking oil refining capabilities, striking some energy production facilities, and then proving they can hit with pinpoint accuracy very specific targets. So they took out, an office here, an office there. To the average onlooker, it was like, oh, well, that's just one missile hitting in a random spot in Tel Aviv. To the Israelis, they went, damn, they hit exactly where that thing was that we were doing. And that also was a signal to the Israelis that the Iranians know about that thing that they were doing. And they hit it and they destroyed it. And that's why Netanyahu panicked. I mean, he was in sheer panic because the Iranians sent very clear messaging that we know everything. And if we want to, we can kill it. But, the problem is Israel hurt Iran. Iran was hurting as well. And so both sides wanted this war to come to an end. But Iran's not going to wait 12 days to send that messaging. This is going to come on day one. And so, I mean, I'm not saying they will kill Netanyahu, but they could very well kill Netanyahu, depending on his reactive, how he reacts. They can kill a lot of the Israeli leadership, and I believe the Israeli leadership will be on the plate. They will destroy the critical infrastructure of Israel, up to and including Dimona. Maybe not the nuclear reactor, but taking out very specific targets, because there's nothing that can defend against what Iran has. You might shoot down 1, 2, 3, 4, but you're not going to shoot them all down. And they're so damn accurate and they're so damn powerful that Israel will be effectively removed from the map. I don't care about Israel. I mean, good. I care about Americans. I don't support Trump, but my God, there's men and women out there who took the oath to wear, to serve their country. They're wearing the uniform of their country. and we have a duty and responsibility to ensure that their lives aren't thrown away in vain. They got their orders. They had to deploy. They have to do the jobs they're given. They're sitting ducks. And the Iranians know everything. They know every target. And the Iranians aren't going to hold back. I don't believe they are. I don't believe there will be a warning shot. I think when the time comes, the Iran will smother American bases the same way they're going to smother Israel. And that's it. And then if the war continues and Israel strikes, for instance, strategic energy targets inside Iran, then you're going to see Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz, destroy Saudi oil fields, destroy UAE oil fields. And now we have an energy crisis in the world that nobody's ready for. I mean, Donald Trump's like, well, we got Venezuelan oil. It's still in the ground, Donnie. Still in the ground. Even your big oil company say it's going to take a while to get it out in any significant. This should be a lesson to anybody who starts playing stupid games with oil infrastructure. When you have a nation like Venezuela was producing, 3 million barrels a day at one point in time, does anybody here know about well maintenance, pressurization, about water pressure, about water levels? What do you have to do with a well once you start extracting oil to prevent water from seeping in and contaminating? What kind of pressures you have to maintain? And you have to maintain them in an active manner as the oil is extracted. It's not reactive. It's all planned out. So when you start decommissioning production and you start drawing these wells down, that pressure goes away, water levels rise, you get a dilution, you corrupt the integrity of the product. Now, that doesn't mean it's unusable. It just means that you just made it much more expensive when they finally get it out. And then when you come back, you've got to repressurize, you got to do the whole thing. This is reality. This happens when we the only nation in the world that can get away with this is Saudi Arabia, who massively on purpose overproduced their oil extraction infrastructure because they were supposed to be the brake. They were supposed to be in the United States. Well, we need more oil in the economy. Hey, Saudi Arabia, jack it up a little bit. Right. We need to, get the prices to go. Hey, Saudi Arabia, slow it down a little bit. We got to manage this. And Saudi Arabia would do that. Saudi Arabia would increase production, decrease production based upon the orders given by the United States. But that requires global stability in terms of energy. But when the United States goes in and we destroy stability through the stupidity of our sanctions, America, I just look around my house right now. Light, energy, oil, plastics, oil. Oil is everywhere. Oil is in everything we have here. Oil just doesn't go to producing gasoline. Oil makes modern life possible. We need a lot of it on a sustainable fashion. And the stupidity of America's policies are designed to deny oil to the market. Now, we produce our own oil, but the price will go up. I don't know about the average American out there, but, my bank account is extraordinarily finite. And when prices go up and my income doesn't match it, that means that I'm buying less with what I earn. And when you start increasing the price of oil, all prices go up. It has a cascading impact. This is our future, guys. They're going to kill thousands of Americans, tens of thousands of Israelis, fundamentally alter the Middle East economy like you've never seen. And the blowback to our economy and the global economy will be disastrous. Merry Christmas. I hope you enjoyed it, because next Christmas, you may not be able to do what you did. This is Donald Trump. This is the most evil man on the planet, the most dangerous man in the world, and this is what he's doing today. You don't buy into this crap about the evil Iranian regime. Look, the one time, when Ahmadinejad was elected president, I bought in sort of to the, Ahmadinejad, bad guy. But then I went to Iran to investigate. This is during Ahmadinejad's time. These are the most wonderful people in the world. They're peace-loving. They are friendly. They love Americans. They've just bent over backwards to be hospitable. They're highly educated. They're modern. We're so like, we're Americans. Our standard of living. Go to Iran, guys. Take a look at their standard of living. I drove on the superhighway out of Tehran, going towards Qom, going towards where the Natanz facility was. There's a city nearby. I can't remember the name of it. But it's a superhighway, and I went into their rest center. Clean, modern toilets. They flush, and they're clean. There's none of this smell you get in the New York, throughway. The smell of some drunk who decided he was going to miss the urinal and just pee on the floor, and they're not going to clean it up, or the guy who emptied his bowels in the back and it's overflowed. And that doesn't exist in Iran. It's clean. They had fast food, but it was good food. It was healthy food. The idea that the Iranians are backwards, that that they're looking to the West for a superior way of life is absurd in the extreme. I've been to Iran, and I would dare say that 99.99% of the people out there who are slamming Iran today have never been to Iran, and they don't know the reality of Iran.
Yeah, right too.
Yeah, let me comment on Air Force Colonel Lindsey Graham, who was a lawyer in Air Force, and he was after deserters and people who didn't want to go to war, and he lived. He did live in the barracks. He lived in the officers club and so forth. Lindsey Graham is the kind of guy that Defense Minister Healy in London is. And I just want to kind of put a reality to this, because although the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova is the consummate diplomat, every now and then she loses it, okay? And what she said when Healy said, we're going to kidnap Putin, he's first on our list, we're going to kidnap him and make him triumph for war crimes. This is what she said officially on Russian TV. Defense Secretary John Healy, his remarks are, and I quote, "the wet dreams of British perverts," period, quote. Okay. So now you have this kind of thing with Lindsey Graham. You have this kind of thing from Central Casting, Dick Tracy type, Trin Pete Hegseth. The problem is that if you take this, or if you're required to take this seriously, as Putin and Xi are, you say, my God, we have a delusional narcissist as president of the United States. We don't know what he's going to do. There is no break. As a matter of fact, these people catalyze his narcissism and give him the idea that we're the kind of martinets that will support you no matter what. And besides, we look pretty good on TV. So we're going to. Now, the problem with all that is, if you're Putin, let's say Putin, he's looking at all this, my God, who does the president have to rely on for some solid advice? Well, the answer is maybe Tulsi Gabbard. Where was Tulsi Gabbard when the big decisions were being made in Venezuela? Oh, she was sunning herself in Hawaii. Okay, I think that's probably the truth. She was not consulted. So let me just bring this back to a historical perspective here. When the CIA was created, Truman wanted one agency that would have access to all the information available to the Pentagon, the State Department, the code breakers, everybody else, a central place where he could go, the president, and say, look, you told me like it is, okay? Tell me what's going on. I don't care what the Pentagon is saying. They're 12 feet tall, these Soviets. The State Department says they're only 5 feet tall. Look, I give you career protection for telling me the truth. Now, that's what analysts did. That's what I did for 2/3 of my career until Bobby Gates and Bill Casey messed it all up, okay? But we were able to tell the president that. Now, what about regime change, okay? Oh, that was something that when the legislation was being prepared, none other than George Kennan said, oh my God, the Russians are The Soviets are assassinating people. They're all kinds of dirty tricks. They have these mokria dela, these wet things. We have to have the same capability. And they put that into the legislation. Legislation reads, the president, the CIA, the director of the CIA shall perform such other tasks and duties, besides the major thing of analysis, as such other functions and duties as the President of the United States shall from time to time direct. So you have two CIAs. The one that Tulsi Gabbard has tried to resurrect and reestablish the analysis part, who were cut out of this Venezuela operation, because the operatives were telling the president and telling everyone else, yeah, we can do this. Of course we could do that. And when somebody said, what about next week? Or what about next year? That was an impolite. That was a bit out of the question. Okay. So what I'm saying here has historical precedent. Okay. What happened in 1953? Well, I graduated from elementary school in 1953. I learned later that we overthrew a leftist-leaning, Soviet-inclined puppet who happened to be the freely, independently elected prime minister of Iran for the first time in 2 millennia. Okay? Now, what was his name? Mossadegh. What was his offense? Oh, he had the temerity, mind you, to say, I think the Iranian people should profit a little bit more from the riches under our sands. So they call it oil. Yeah, we shouldn't give it all to the British. And now the British, MI6, took the fledgling CIA, mind you, just 1953, by the shoulder and said, no, you young guys, you have to understand, this is what you do when an upstart in the third world thinks that the oil underneath his soil belongs to him. And there was a terrible coup in. So the next year they did Guatemala. They've been doing this all the time. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that this is in the legislation. And when later President Kennedy, and this is perhaps the best example, I'm trying to give a context here. When Kennedy came into office, they briefed him on the Bay of Pigs, that all these rebel forces that had trained really well in Guatemala, elsewhere, they're going to invade Cuba. And guess what, Mr. President Kennedy? The Fidel Castro is going to fall because there'll be a public insurrection, and we'll get rid of those communists in Cuba. Okay. Now, Kennedy looked at the plans and he said, I don't think so. Oh, you say Eisenhower approved it? Well, go ahead. But look, don't expect me to authorize the use of U.S. armed forces in case you get bogged down on the beach. Now, they laughed at him. They said, and we know from Hallam Dulles' handwritten notes, coffee-stained handwritten notes from his desk after he died, that he said, when we get caught on the beach, the president will have no other option other than to support us with aircraft and army stuff, lest the enterprise fail. Enterprise remove Castro. Okay, so it was a setup. What did JFK do? And this is what every president should do. He said, hey, who's around here that can look into why these people told me that Castro is going to fall? Oh, Arthur Schlesinger Jr. You're a historian, but could you take 2 months off? Yeah, 2 months, and look at how this farcical explanation how did they find? So he went to less than 2 months. We have the memo now. Schlesinger to Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, I hate to tell you this, but the analysis division of CIA was cut out of this whole thing. They were not even informed that would happen, much less asked for their views on, for example, whether Fidel Castro would be the victim of a popular insurrection. All the analysts said that was crazy, that would never happen, but they weren't consulted. So it was the operatives who wanted to run the operation. Now, the same thing is happening in Venezuela. The same thing is happening anytime you have not only a CIA director like John Ratcliffe. But when you have a national security advisor, now who's the national security? Oh my God, that's
Narco
Rubio.
Rubio. Yeah.
Yeah. Now Rubio is also the Secretary of State, but national security advisor gives you the ability, the duty really, to funnel things into the president. You can be very selective, and a lot of what Trump has been led to believe comes from Rubio for sure. So all I'm saying here is that needs to be fixed. And will it be fixed? Well, one hope springs eternally, but when Tulsi Gabbard proves to have been right about this kind of thing, when her memos from her analysts on Venezuela can be dug out of the computers, I think there's a chance that there'll be a reckoning, and especially if Venezuela becomes the United States' new Vietnam, and I'm pretty sure it will, unless they stop it right now. Then maybe, just maybe, people come to their senses, realize there are two CIAs, separate them out, give the operations people to the Pentagon where it should be, and let the intelligence people do the analysis and come up with what Truman called several times untreated intelligence, which means tell me like it is, don't flavor it, don't distort it. And last thing I'll say is that the worst crime, and I saw it, and so did Scott, on Iraq, okay? We know that on July 20th, 2002, the head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove, came to Langley to ask George Tenet, the director of Central Intelligence, what does Bush really plan to do? Now, Tony Blair talks to him every week, but, it's not the same as... So Tony asked me to come, what are you going to do? And when Blair went back to brief, when Sir Richard Dearlove went back to brief Blair, we have the minutes of that meeting, and it says the operative sentence, the operative paragraph, Bush has decided to invade Iraq on the pretense of weapons of mass destruction and terrorism. Translation, we're going to say he has weapons of mass destruction, and then he's going to give them to terrorists. We're going to associate Saddam Hussein with 9/11. It will work like a charge, and then the crowning sentence. But the facts and the analysis is being shaped around the policy. So Blair knew that, Tenet knew that, and they did it anyway. And my saddest time is watching my former colleagues who were participants in that fraud get meritorious step increases and prizes for fashioning a national intelligence estimate that was fraudulent from the get-go, and which they knew was fraudulent, all to please the Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney. May he rest in peace forever.
Yeah. Well, quickly, before we get to the final story on Russia, Ukraine, Scott and Ray, speaking of history, if you can just comment on this, one of the big things that one of the big things about this regime change operation, or attempted one, is the support that the United States and now the Trump administration openly supporting the grandson of the Shah, Reza Pahlavi. And according to sources, Steve Witkoff met with Reza Pahlavi privately. And so maybe you can help us out with a bit of a history lesson briefly on what does this say? I mean, what is this? We have with the United States meeting openly with someone not even in the country, with a deep, deep history, a family history with Iran that is very dark. What does this say about the Trump administration and U.S. foreign policy right now, Scott?
It's the foreign policy of a madman and the foreign policy of a bully. Look, why would first of all, who is Steve Witkoff? He's a special envoy. He's not an expert on anything except maybe New York State real estate and Donald Trump. Donald Trump trusts him. That's the thing. But this isn't a guy that can go and have a back channel communication and get deep insights and then sit down and, based upon his own extensive experience, shape something together that would be, useful to the president. He's there just for show. He's meeting with, the Shah's son, this crown prince who, claims the throne. There's nothing substantive in this meeting. Witkoff is incapable of substantive dialogue. He is superficial in the extreme. So he's just going through the motions of creating an image, a perception that the United States is actively working with this guy who Israel is using to orchestrate this social media campaign to promote him as a potential successor to the supreme leader. It also says that the United States isn't serious. Look, if I were the crown prince, I'd be like, I don't want Steve Witkoff. I want the national security advisor. I want Marco Rubio. I want, Pete Hegseth. I want somebody who actually can, that's a policy maker. Witkoff's not a policy maker. He's not even a policy implementer. He's a policy, he's the coat of wax you put on your car. He's not serious. He's not a serious person. So it doesn't tell me anything other than the fact that the Trump administration just isn't serious. It's not serious about doing this right. The fact of the matter is, Donald Trump is a prisoner of the CIA. They are running everything. I don't want to jump the gun in Russia, but I'll just say this, and maybe it's a good segue into Russia. The CIA has been at war with Russia forever, when it was the Soviet Union.
That's our job. That's our job. Yeah.
That's right. Ray was an analyst, and your job was to ascertain the truth and brief people about Russia, but mainly you were looking for vulnerabilities that could be exploited, or strengths that needed to be countered. You weren't evaluating Russia from the friendship factor. Mr. President, today, on a scale of 1 to 10, friendship factor is 8. I think we could have good relations with these people. No, you're Mr. President.
Actually, that happened in the 1970s and the 80s. So, it was a mixed bag, but we were trying to do it objectively, as you know, Scott. And there were times of détente, of rapprochement. Correct. And we almost had that again, almost. But go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
But the operators never bought into it. The operator's job was never to do. The operator's job was to destroy the Soviet Union and destroy. Everybody focuses on the case officers and the spying. That's a big part of things. But you do know that the CIA is responsible for the largest non-nuclear explosion in history, and that's the sabotage of a Russian gas line.
Oh,
a Soviet gas line. This is what the CIA does. They are a destructive force. And on Russia, they have been seeking to bring down, having brought down the Soviet Union, the decade of the 1990s, the CIA was just positioning the United States to keep the knee on the throat. We were very close to Boris Yeltsin. Our assets were everywhere, and our job was to manage him, to keep Russia down, to weaken them. And when we were having trouble weakening Russia, we then went and we created a conflict in Chechnya by pouring in Wahhabists, outside influencers, etc., both in the 90s, later in the early 2000s. And then we started sending people off to Kazan, in the Tatar Republic to try and get them to break away, to Ufa and Bashkir to get the Muslims to break. We tried to turn the Muslims against the Russians. This was the CIA's job. This is what they were trying to do, regime change. And they've never been given the off switch. Never. The whole Navalny thing is a giant CIA setup, straight up. They worked with the British. You got Navalny's campaign manager meeting with a British spy out of the embassy, asking for $10 million.
On tape.
On tape. It's right there. And the Russians have they have the spy rock. Remember the spy rock, where the British would come by and download messages, and then Russians would come by with their little phone and upload messages, and the Russians went, why don't we monitor this for a while? So they're getting all the information. Guys coming in going, we need $5 million. And the British coming in going, all right, you'll find the $5 million here. And then the people get that and start heading, and they get nabbed by the FSB, who say, okay, now you got to play the game along. And they drug it until they got the whole thing laid out. The Russians rolled up our own networks. I mean, there's the Foley, who the stupidity. The CIA is not there to promote friendship; they're there to destroy. And with Ukraine, when Ukraine came along in 2014, 2015, the CIA was given the job of preparing for war, and they prepared the Ukrainians for deep strikes. They worked with the British to identify deep cellular structures within Russia that could be mobilized to support things like, building a drone factory and sending trucks out to have drones come up and attack strategic bombers. And the CIA is actively plotting not only to destroy Russian oil infrastructure, they admit it. The CIA, Ray called it out. The New York Times is just the mouthpiece of the CIA. They literally colluded with the CIA on a covert operation that's attacking a nuclear-armed superpower. And admitting it, bragging about it. I believe the timing of that was supposed to be linked to a 91 drone attack on Putin's residence, which we know now they were attacking the residence because the Russians had the chip. But the point is, this is what the CIA is doing. Now, for a while there, I thought that this was a rogue operation because Trump, I'll be the first one to say, I thought Trump was serious about peace with Russia. I really did think that he was serious about peace with Russia. It turns out he was never serious about peace with Russia. That peace with Russia was always a setup. That Donald Trump's objectives have been aligned with the CIA objectives from day one in this administration to bring down the regime of Vladimir Putin. Straight up, bring it down. When John Ratcliffe in May of last year put out his 5-page whitewashing of Julian Garganis, the former national intelligence officer of that, he basically said, "Oh, yeah, she was there when the intelligence community's attack on Trump took place, but she didn't have anything to do with it. She was hands off." Meanwhile, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, is getting ready to declassify, Matt Gaetz's report. Not Matt Gaetz, I forget who the California congressman, can't remember his name, but he did a report that was just belittled by the Obama administration. Turns out he was on to something because he basically said these people hate Donald Trump and they cooked up information to frame Donald Trump. And the person that was behind this was Julian Garganis. Now, so as soon as she published this thing, they put her out into the pasture. She was still CIA, but she was off at a think tank doing think tank stuff. They brought her back. Radcliffe brought her back. Why? She was the person on Air Force One briefing Donald Trump as he flew to Alaska to meet Vladimir Putin. Now, when I heard that, when I found that out, I'm like, wait a minute. She's a known hater of Trump, but worse, she's a hater of Putin. Why would you have a Putin hater briefing the president on the eve of a mission that's supposed to be peace to create the spirit of Alaska? Because it was all a setup, and Donald Trump was in on the setup, straight up in on the setup. He has been targeting Vladimir Putin from day one. Alaska was a fraud. Alaska was designed to create the idea that things could get better. Kirill Dmitriev, meeting with Steve Witkoff. Man, we can lift sanctions and make billions, trillions of dollars. We can build a tunnel. We can connect Alaska with Siberia, baby. Build this tunnel. We can do everything. And everybody's going to be so rich. It's going to be crazy. And the Russians went, cool. And they started planning cells. Governors would have planning cells. But the problem is when you do that, people start counting their money before it's in the bank. They sit there and go, holy cow, if they lift this and America comes in and we get deep, oh, baby, we get that oil out. We can put it on the, man, I'm already driving my Maserati. I got the Dacia that I'm going to go to Dubai. I'm spending all this money. That's what the whole purpose was. It's mental warfare. And then at the appropriate time, Donald Trump goes, yeah, no, we're going to double down, sanction Rosneft, sanction Lukoil, and it's all Vladimir Putin's fault. Everybody, all those Russians that were spending the money go, damn it, Putin, that's the goal. damn it, Putin, to get him up there. They tried to kill Vladimir Putin. Straight up. We know there's no ifs, ands, or buts. The chip they turned over to the United States has the exact coordinates of the residents on it. And the intelligence that was packaged in there to guide this drone in there is very specific intelligence, packaged in a unique manner, a digital fingerprint that lends itself to the Tomahawk targeting cell that's in Europe, Department of Defense. It's the only place in the world that can do this. And they have a relationship with Palantir, who then took it and gave it to the Ukrainians, who loaded it on in real-time fashion. The Russians know this. Now, they handed it over to the United States. They didn't say anything. They went, here, look at it. And the United States will look at it. And when you do that, they're going to go, they know everything because it's all there. It's all there. We tried, I'm not going to say to kill Putin because, again, the time of flight of the drones and such, the Russians would have put him in a bunker that couldn't be hit by these. But we attacked the president of Russia. Why? Trump was sending a signal. You're weak. You're weak. I'm making you go underground. I'm Donald Trump. You're weak. And the whole idea is, again, to diminish Putin in the eyes of the Russian political and economic elite who have been empowered now with the dream of wealth, to create a fifth column to bring down Putin, because that's the CIA's job. And Donald Trump ordered them to do it. So peace is dead. There is no hope whatsoever for the restoration of this. The Russians, Lavrov put out a statement. And we're not walking away from American dialogue yet. Why would they? You need dialogue to prevent a nuclear war. Remember, with Biden, there was no dialogue. So the Russians will keep the chain of command open. But then they said, yeah, but this latest thing changes everything. There's no more, let's just put it this way. What you thought was going to happen ain't going to happen. It's going to be something different. Then they followed up, and this is the most important thing here out of all of everything, which I believe is important. They fired a second Oreshnik. And that closes the door on any potential of a resurrection of the INF Treaty, of bringing stability to Europe. The Russians, Dmitry Medvedev and others have come out and said that Oreshnik intermediate range missiles are now a major aspect of Russia's strategic nuclear deterrence. And it will be used. It gives Russia the ability to escalate using strategic forces in a non-nuclear fashion. Now, they've now made it their policy. It is there. They are deploying units. And Ryabkov came out the other day and said, yeah, Oreshnik's cool. More. They're better. And they're coming on. I can't name them right now, but they're there. They're ready to be used. And we saw it. The Iskander M, 1,000 kilometers now, 800 miles. INF system. They've taken. Russia will never back down from INF now. It is a permanent part of their posture because Europe is irresponsible. America is irresponsible. Donald Trump put the other nail in the coffin. $1.5 trillion defense budget, decided to breathe life into Golden Dome. The Russians said, you do Golden Dome, there is no arms control. New START expires next month. It will not be revived, and there will be no cap because the United States is putting hundreds of millions of dollars into mass production of plutonium pits. We're going to rapidly expand this, and watch what this idiot does, because as we rapidly expand, I'm sure someone's going to say, some of these are new designs, boss. We need to test them. And you can go test them, do it. Boom. Now we got nuclear testing. The Russians are going to match. We're literally in a nuclear arms race right now. There is no hope whatsoever for arms control. It is dead. The Russians have made it clear now that they have the advantage. They won the nuclear arms race, by the way. They have overmatch across the board, and they're not going to give it up. And for the United States to match them, you remember in the Cold War how they said, we forced the Soviet Union to spin themselves into death? Remember that one?
Yeah.
Star Wars, and we forced them in. Well, the Russians right now are just sitting there going, we got it all. What do you got? Nothing, right? Oh, go ahead and spend that money. Spend that $3, $5, $7 trillion you have to spend to catch up. That isn't going to catch up. You're never going to catch up. This is where the Russians are sitting. And as long as you have a president of the United States that tries to kill a Russian president, they will never negotiate anything that removes or reduces their ability to defend themselves. Because the one thing the Russians have is the guarantee that if the United States ever did kill the Russian president, the United States would cease to exist. So, it's over. They'll talk. They'll keep the communication over, but they don't trust us. at all. Zero trust.
Well, okay, yeah.
Right.
Now, let me claim equal time. I've taken some notes, Scott. Let me see where we start. Maybe we'll start with the Shah's son. I have met the Shah's son. They were back in the day, 20 years ago, when I used to be in green rooms or blue rooms. And I was warned, not warned, but a very excited person with the Shah's son came, Mr. McGovern, the Shah's son is coming in. And so he came into the blue room right where I was standing, and I was supposed to be impressed. And I didn't say nothing, okay? I just looked at him, and I remember my Irish grandmother, if that's society, excuse me. So I stuck up my hand, and I want to tell you, that was the limpest kind of hand that I've ever shook, okay? Now, in contrast, as Scott knows, I was at the parade on May 8th in Moscow, had pretty good seats. Scott saw me up there with some pretty big dignitaries. The point is, I got a chance to shake the hand of Maduro. Now, I want to tell you, that hand is 2 times as big as mine, and he almost crushed my hand, right? Now, this is all allegorical, but I think it might apply here. The Shah's son, did they think there's a following for the Shah's son in Iran? I mean, who told Witkoff that was sort of a sign, I guess, to people they thought. I mean, there aren't any, there are maybe 100 people. They're all descendants of the Shah. Anyhow, so that was sort of a crazy thing. How about the flight to Anchorage? After she briefed the president, he told a Fox reporter, and I quote, I'm really excited here, but, if we don't come out with some kind of ceasefire on this, I'm going to be awfully disappointed. He already know. Witkoff already told him that there wasn't going to be any ceasefire agreed to by the Russians. And yet he told him, why did he say? I've always been wondering. Well, I think I know why. He was briefed by this Russophobe saying, well, they should give you a ceasefire. Anyhow, the way it came out, Trump apparently made this overture, and Putin said, hey, I thought we told you if that's a no goer. And of course, he backed off, and 2 hours later, Trump checked out. We're not going to do a ceasefire. We're going to do the whole enchilada. We're going to get the whole agreement. Okay. The other part of the agreement, which people don't really remember, is that Trump agreed to sit on Zelensky and the European 7 dwarfs. Okay. Now, indeed, Trump convened the 7 dwarfs 3 days after Anchorage, and they sat before him as if before a tutor in the White House. And in the midst of it, Trump said, "Oh, sorry, Putin's given me a call. Would you please leave, please? I'll let you know when you can come back. Maybe 20 minutes ago." Yeah, okay. So he thought that would give these guys the message. It didn't. And so Trump was unable to fulfill his pledge to Putin to rein Zelensky in and his compatriots in Europe and make sure they don't put the kibosh on an agreement toward a real reconciliation or a real agreement on Ukraine. So that was the Anchorage agreement, and I think that was something that Trump blessed, and actually the evidence is clear that he put Witkoff, and I don't share Scott's view of Witkoff. I think he doesn't know much about foreign relations, but he's a damn good negotiator. Don't ask me, ask Vladimir Putin, who has seen him, I think, 7 or 8 times, sometimes one time for over 4 hours. So let me just continue this sort of thing. What else the other thing I want to say was, Scott, you're referring to the big gas explosion in Siberia, right? That where we sabotage. Yeah. Well, you know who wrote a term paper about that?
You?
A guy named Anthony Blinken.
Oh, okay.
you know about that, yeah. It's all laid out there. And of course, Blinken, after Nord Stream was blown up,
Yeah.
or said, "Oh, this is a wonderful opportunity for economic advancement for us in America. America first." So, okay, is there anything else? Yeah, just this. Well, no, I'll stop there. But
Well,
I'll say this. Now, Danny, I sent you one sentence. Did you have a chance to kind of put that up there, because it indicates exactly where Scott and I disagree on interpretation. Well, I'll just read the sentence.
right. Right. Okay. Okay. I could read the sentence too.
All right.
I'll read it. How about that? Despite this attack, we have no intention to withdraw from negotiations with the U.S. However, given the utmost degeneration of the criminal Kiev regime, which has shifted to a policy of state terrorism, Russia's negotiating position will be reviewed. That was Sergei Lavrov directly after the attempted assassination of Putin. But you're
Same day. So this is, in my view, the only real official reaction we have. Lavrov was told to say these things, no doubt, cleared it with Putin, and it's a two-part paragraph. And who's got the best idea on this? I don't know. But the first part says, despite this attack, we have no intention to withdraw from negotiations with the United States, period. Now, the second part is, however, adnaka, the Russians have this great word, adnaka, it means however, given the utmost degeneration of the criminal Kiev regime, which has shifted to a policy of state terrorism, Russia's negotiating position will be reviewed. I'll just add one sentence. I think it's not over until the fat lady sings, okay? Now, the fat lady, that is Putin, Lavrov, may have sung in confidential conversations with their opposite numbers in Washington. I don't know that. It's possible they say, go to hell. We're out of it. So arms control is over. But I'd like to see them say that publicly, because I would expect them to do that. Last thing, the attack on Putin's, what the Russians call the state residence there near Valdai. Okay, you're right. They have the ports now. They have that little computer, that little gizmo that they can show exactly where that drone was targeted. Now, the Russians would never give that to the United States unless, in my view, unless it proved beyond reasonable doubt that that's exactly where it was headed. Now, the U.S. has had that for 6 days, okay? Now, have they examined it? Who did they give it to? Oh, they probably gave it to the CIA. And the CIA said, do you want us to shape our analysis around the policy, Mr. Trump? Or you want to give us, the honest answer is, yeah, that was programmed right to hit the residents. But then about the technology. You know more about this than I, Scott, but I would ask, this is DOD technology. Have we not shared that with NATO? In other words, could it be that it was one of the NATO partners that put this technology in a place in Ukraine where it could be used to fire these drones out? In other words, even though it's Western technology, even though it was developed by Department of Defense here, could it be that someone else other than the CIA or the armed forces or the president gave this for it to be used in this manner? I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's a lingering question I would really like to hear your take on.
Scott,
We'll start with this. Lavrov's response came out the same day of the attack.
Right.
And that was at a time when President Trump said that he was very upset about this. He was very angry with Zelensky if this was indeed the case.
Right.
After that statement was made, Trump changed his position radically. And then he called Putin a liar. He said, you're lying. Didn't happen.
Well, he didn't use those words.
Literally called him a liar, Ray.
No,
He literally
no.
called him a liar.
No, what he
He
said
said,
was
this didn't happen. It didn't happen. It happened. The Russians get, that's the importance of this chip. You see,
yeah, that was the fourth.
The CIA colluded with the New York Times to publish an article about how the CIA was targeting in the most direct, intimate way possible, Russian oil infrastructure.
Right.
Precision strikes.
Oil. Yeah. But then say it about the residents.
The same drones, using the same guidance. It's the same weapon. It's a CIA-run asset, the 14th Regiment, launching the same drone, using the same chips, directed by the CIA. And the CIA had been working with the New York Times on this article for days, if not weeks prior to. The timing of the release of this article is not an accident. The CIA was sending a signal. We are targeting you.
Right.
We are targeting you.
The CIA,
the chip was given to the Russians days after Trump called Putin a liar, after he said none of what the Russians are saying is true. And the CIA gave this, or the Russians gave this chip, and that chip does a couple things. That chip proves that the residence was the target. There's no doubt about it. But given this drone, and the way this drone, Palantir, this drone is a drone jointly produced by the Germans and the Ukrainians.
Right.
The guidance system is actually a German chip produced by Germany. But Palantir is responsible for the targeting, not the German government. Palantir does the targeting.
Okay.
And Palantir says that they get commercially available intelligence that they then blend with intelligence given to the Ukrainians by
NATO.
By whomever. They didn't say NATO. By whomever. And it's blended in. The assumption is supposed to be Germany, NATO, all this. But here's the thing. The technology that's being used, which is AI-driven technology, mirrors that of the Tomahawk guidance system, but slowed down because you're in a drone. But basically, there's no GPS. The thing gets launched in a trajectory. Halfway through, it does a course correction based upon timing. It'll turn on either radar or a camera. It will take an image that is then matched with data stored in the drone, and it'll align itself and keep going. But there's other data that comes in. Wind speed, weather conditions, the guidance that they go around the air defense networks. This is stuff that's only collected. It's not collected by commercially available resources.
Right.
And the specificity of the information can only be collected by the United States. And the way it was packaged, the way it was packaged itself is a unique signature. Remember, the Russians have complete Tomahawk missiles. You know, the ones we fired into Syria that sort of ended up in a field? So the Tomahawk guidance system is not unfamiliar to the Russians. And those Tomahawks that were fired received their digital targeting packet from the DoD activity in Europe. They're the ones who make it up. And they're the ones who send it out via classified communication means to the various ships that then program it up.
Yeah. Is that
so
NATO?
The Russians have the digital signature. NATO can't do this. NATO cannot do this. Only the United States can do this.
The United States gives it to NATO.
We don't. We don't give it to NATO.
Okay. So NATO has no way of using the kind of U.S.-specific technology that you described, and no way to give that to the Ukrainians.
NATO has Scalp missiles. NATO has Storm Shadow missiles. NATO has the German Taurus that hasn't been provided.
Right.
But the specific targeting system is they're different targeting systems that use different inputs. The digital fingerprint of this chip is a DoD digital fingerprint. And that was given, there's a reason why they gave it to the Americans. They didn't give it to the Americans to point the finger at Germany. They didn't give it to the Americans to point the finger at France or the United Kingdom. They gave it to the Americans to point the finger at Donald Trump who lied to them, straight up lied to them. And they now know that he tried to kill the president of Russia. That's what they know. Now you say you'd like them to make a statement. Let me give you a following statement that the Russians have made. When I was in Russia in November, I met with the Gorky Institute. That's a group out of St. Petersburg. Karen Knissel, the former foreign minister of Austria, runs it, and it's in close collaboration with the Russian foreign ministry. And we were at that time trying to figure out how we could put arms control on the agenda. The Russian government made it clear, very clear to me, that they weren't going to talk about arms control. They weren't going to talk about Oreshnik. They weren't going to talk about nuclear anything. That was all hushed up because of the close communications that were supposed to be taking place with the United States on this issue. Meanwhile, while they're waiting for that, Lavrov's saying, they ain't picking up the phone. We're waiting here. We're ready. They ain't picking up the phone. Nobody's talking to us. But we did come up with a thing where we were going to do mock negotiations. And the idea of the mock negotiations was to go through the processes of problem solving related to the various issues related to New START extension, INF, ABM. And the Russian government went, we like that idea. That's a good idea. Because that's not making policy, but that's getting it out there. That's moving it forward in a positive way. We're going to do it in St. Petersburg, bring a similar thing parallel to the United States, have these two things together so you could deliver packets of information to the foreign ministry and the State Department. And they were all on board. They just pulled the plug. They said, we ain't doing arms control. It ain't happening. It's dead. Now, they haven't done that publicly, but I'm just here to tell you right now, the foreign ministry was excited about this. They ain't excited about it anymore. The Russians, they're not interested. They fired the Oreshnik. That means that the Oreshnik is now, as Dmitry Medvedev said, an integral part of their nuclear deterrence posture. And they're not giving it up to a lying sack of manure government that tried to kill the president. Remember, the Russians are furious about this. They're furious about this because this isn't a CIA accident.
Yeah,
This is a directed activity by the CIA, directed by the president of the United States, who's covering for the CIA right now.
Right.
That's the Russian interpretation.
well,
Ray,
yeah,
well, before you go, briefly, I did have one more question for both of you. So, Ray, just please finish, but I have one more question, and then we can
Sure,
close.
okay. Yeah, the Russians are furious. They were furious when the Ukrainians attacked their bomber fields, part of their triad deterrent. What did they do? Well, they complained more about drones that dropped a railroad bridge and killed some civilians. They were furious, but they did not make a big federal case out of it. There were other things that they're furious about. But what I'm trying to say here is that Putin may be furious, but he's calm, cool, and collected. This statement by Lavrov, you'll recall, blames it on the terrorists in Ukraine. If Putin is briefed and told erroneously, in your view, Scott, that this was NATO for sure, we don't know if the U.S. did it directly, then he will have a way of blaming it on Ukraine again. Now, the other thing is that there's been no response. It's been a good week, if memory serves, that the U.S. has had this component that they could analyze. Now, let's say that, of course, I bow to you on your expertise, that it shows that it was targeted right on the state residents and that it was U.S. technology. This, in my view, is a litmus test. If Putin, as I believe he was, has been interested first and foremost to have a umbrella good relationship with the United States, why would he want that? To avoid a nuclear war. Is that clear enough? I think it's very clear, and I think they've made that very clear. He's a cautious guy, and this guy is irascible. He's unpredictable. You gotta be careful with him. That's the priority. Okay. Now, if he still wants to hope that people like Witkoff and others can can work out things on Ukraine, for example, then he has the option of being furious, but being also Putin. But if the administration comes back with an answer that says, no, Mr. Putin, you're lying. We can tell that you're lying. These were actually, we know that they weren't headed toward. If it comes back with that kind of massaging of the intelligence, or equally bad, if they don't respond at all, if even in secure channels there's no response, Putin will have to take this as the next to the last straw. What's the last straw? New start. Okay. Putin made a personal plea to the United States president on the 22nd of February, as you know better than anyone, Scott, that he would abide by the quantitative limits on offensive missiles and bombers and so forth of New START, even after it expires on February 5th. Okay. Now, what has Trump said? Well, a couple of weeks later, some journalist said, "What do you think of that?" "Oh, I think it sounds like a good idea to me." The Russians have been imploring the U.S., please, could we please have a more official response? Okay, they've gotten none. It's less than 4 weeks now. If there's no response, or if it's a negative response, then I would say you're right. Arms control is dead. Okay. Then I would say the fat lady has sung. But until that time, I see that the fat lady has not sung the final song yet. And, I'm happy to engage in this conversation
but Trump did answer it. Just
what
the
did
other
he say?
day.
What did he say?
They said New START's expiring, so it expires. That was his answer. So it expires.
Well, that's not an official answer in my view.
He's the president of the United States. He said so.
When did he say that? How did I miss that?
I don't know how you missed it, but he said it in all of this stupidity that's going on. It's a throwaway statement that the media didn't pick up on. I picked up on it. And Putin did respond. The Ministry of Defense made it very clear that the firing of the Oreshnik, and this is why I put so much emphasis on it, was a direct response to the attack against Putin's residence.
Now, Scott, I would argue that the Oreshnik, the Russians have described that as an intermediate range missile, correct? Okay. Now, when Putin was asked about this at one of the Q&As, he was asked, what are the prospects for arms control? He said, there's a two-part answer here. If the Americans agree to prolong the quantitative limits of New START, I know what to expect for the next year. If they don't, that's a different kettle of fish, and it's more complicated now because of middle-range ballistic missiles that need to be taken into account, and of course, China. So Putin has made it very clear that there's a difference in Russian eyes between the intermediate-range ballistic missiles, which they still consider the Oreshnik, and the main thing, which I would say is the supreme litmus test, if Trump cannot agree to prolong those limits, no negotiations, no talks, it's just yes or a no. If he can't do that, Putin will have to say, all right, you guys were right. He's not his own man. Even if he would like to do that, he can't do that. We will draw the necessary conclusions. Then the fat lady will have sung.
But he's real quick. There's two other conditions Putin put on it, right? First is that if the intermediate missiles aren't contained, that if they become deployed and all this, if the United States deploys Dark Eagle, all bets are off. And the second one was Golden Dome. He said there can be no Golden Dome. Trump just put forward a $1.5 trillion defense budget. It's all about Golden Dome.
You're right.
So it's over. It's dead. It's finished. It's done. Putin doesn't back away from his thing. And I just want to remind you, the Oreshnik may be an intermediate range missile. It's a strategic asset. It's operated by the Strategic Rocket Forces, operated under the same command structure. Right. And it's targeted as part of the strategic targeting. This isn't a tactical or operational system. The decision to use Oreshnik was a strategic decision by the president of Russia, and the Ministry of Defense made it clear that it was directly related to the attack on Putin's residence.
You're right, Scott.
Yeah.
I would say that you remember the last part of that overture on the 22nd of September, which included those things that you just said. And I compliment you on your memory being more comprehensive than mine.
Well,
No, I'm just anal.
well, Scott, I have not been able to cover, I wanted to cover the specifics and the particularities of the Oreshnik strike that occurred in response to the CIA and U.S. Assassination attempt on Vladimir Putin. So could you talk about this? Like, what exactly happened? The Oreshnik slammed into Lviv, which is right on the Polish border. There was a significant message sent here, and so I was wondering if you could help our audience understand what is significant about this second use of the Oreshnik and what exactly happened.
Well, there's going to be an awful lot of speculation here, so just understand, because nobody's come out and agree. What I'll say is this: the first Oreshnik attack was done by a test missile. The Russians said it was an operational test. And if you look at the strike, the warheads struck in relatively the same area. They picked 6 different targets within the same narrow geographical space in Dnipro. This strike by a second Oreshnik, there were 6 distinct, physically separated targets. I think there was an aircraft refurbishment facility that might have taken 3. When I say 3, it's 6. The 6 submunitions, 3 independently target warheads, 6 submunitions, boom, boom, boom. But one of them went off and hit the strategic gas position, and I think that they hit other targets. So what the Russians demonstrated this time is, because they were saying, it just comes in and it's not accurate. The Russians went, watch this. See, it's separated. And now see what happens. The 6 independently targeted things go and hit 6 distinct targets that are, the Oreshnik has a greater. So the Russians gave away a very big operational detail about the Oreshnik, that it's not just concentrated in one area. It's 6 separate, targetable maneuvering warheads that put it down with precision on where they need to go. So that's a signal that the Russians sent too about capability. The Russians have been, the Oreshnik has gone into serial production. That was announced, a while back, but it actually began, I think, in August is when the first serial produced missile came off of the production line in Votkhinsk. Since that time, they've put together a brigade. That's 3 battalions of 3 launchers each. That's 9 missiles. There's a 10th missile used there for training purposes. So 10 missiles serial produced out of Votkhinsk between August and December, when this brigade went operational. But the Russians have said there are other brigades forming up as well. The launch didn't come from an operational unit. The launch came from Kapustin Yar. When Putin first announced the Oreshnik, he said it was an operational test, and he said, we have several of these assembled together, but it's a test missile. We don't have, it's not gone into serial production. It is in serial production now. Those missiles are going to operational brigades in the Belarusian military. Well, it's actually a Russian brigade in Belarus, jointly commanded, and then other brigades that are up there. This missile was a test missile as well. It's sort of funny to just tell a little war story here. They're looking at the debris, and somebody goes, "Look, there's a lamp in there, a lamp, an old Soviet lamp in there. This isn't sophisticated." When I was a weapons inspector in Votkhinsk, we used this thing called the stage measuring device. So you pop the lid off the missile, and you're supposed to slide the stage measuring device down into the missile, and then they had optic things. You're measuring the gap between the stages to make sure that the second stage wasn't the same as an SS-20, but it had to be illuminated. And so down there they had lamps. And I remember, and now this is a solid propellant thing. We had to wear anti-static clothing and, touch ourselves clean before we got up anywhere near this missile. I wasn't on this test. I wish I was. I'd kill myself. But I had a good friend who was, John Sartorius. And so they slide it down there, and they're down there, and all of a sudden that lamp down there goes, there's a surge. The lamp blows up inside the launch canister of a solid rocket missile, and everybody just freezes. And about 10 seconds later, one of the Soviets goes, well, we're still alive. And so they pull the thing out, and now there's shards of glass down there. And they're like, well, we need another lamp. Now, the Soviets had told, because when the Americans were looking at it going, there's a lamp on this. This is a very special made lamp made by this factory in Moscow specifically for this. The Russians went out to a standard, I think it was a truck, and they took out the headlight. They took the lamp off the headlight, and they came in and they soldered it on there and said, we can go again. And the Americans were like, we ain't doing that. My point is, the Russians, when they do testing, there's things in there that are sort of soldered in there, to test. That lamp isn't part of the operating system of the Oreshnik. That lamp is probably in there to illuminate parts of the missile as it goes through vibration tests. Kapustin Yar has an off-road area where they take the launcher and they run it around, and then they bring it back and see if they can raise it up and see if the gyros spin up, and they do all these tests on it so that, if something breaks, they go, oh, wait, we got to fix that. And then they send it back to the Moscow Institute of Thermal Technology, and they think about it, and they come up with fixes, and it goes to Votkinsk, and they put together a test missile, and they send it out to Kapustin Yar, and they test it. The Russians fired a test missile, which, again, means that the Russians aren't showing the full capacity of this missile, but they showed enough. They fired a missile that this time the warheads separated and hit 6 distinct targets. But these weren't operational missiles. Those missiles are now deployed. It'll be a different game the day the Russians stop firing the Oreshnik from Kapustin Yar, because that's still a demonstration. They fire it from an actual operational unit, that's war. But the Russians are fed up, Ray. I mean, all these guys who advise the president, the people in parliament, the close advisors of the president, they're all coming out, and they are furious. I mean, they want to nuke Europe right now. They straight up the head of the defense committee in the parliament. That's just the equivalent of, whoever runs the House, Armed Service Committee, nuke them. And I'm going to advise the president to nuke them now. Sergei Karagana, very well-known political theorist who is close to Vladimir Putin. We need to use nuclear weapons against Europe now. It's the only thing they'll understand. This is the rhetoric taking place. Now, Vladimir Putin, of course, is much more pragmatic and smart, and he carries the weight of the world on his shoulders, and I don't believe he's going to do that. But we can't be dismissive of the fact that the Russian system is furious that the United States tried to kill their president.
Yeah.
Furious. Blind furious.
Yeah, no, I would say that's really important. And Karaganov, of course, has been saying this for, if not decades, at least years. So he's under some pressure to do so, that is, Putin is. And I would just add here, and I think this is something that's really important. 10 years ago, when U.S. and other Western journalists were in St. Petersburg for a big economic conference, Putin invited them to a little around-the-table briefing. There were about 20 of them, okay? And what he said was, look, I don't know why you guys don't take this seriously. I'm going to tell you what we've had to do because the U.S. has rejected all our initiatives. We're not helpless. We're developing very imaginative systems that the U.S. can't defend against. Now, I don't expect you to write this in your newspapers. I don't even expect you to tell your editors about this, which, of course, Putin was right. But I'm going to tell you what it is. We have the tape of that, okay? Now, 2 years later, in his State of the Union address, Putin got up and did a show and tell about these new, sophisticated, different technology weapons that were going to come online eventually, and now they're online, okay? You know, it's not only the Oreshnik, but the Poseidon and lots of others. Now, what I'm trying to say is, the important thing is that for the first time in my life, much less my professional career, Russia has an advantage on us, not only in conventional arms, but in strategic arms. They have a deterrent that won't quit. My question, why is it that no intelligence or armed forces intelligence outfit has acknowledged that and has said to the President of the United States, look, we need to cry uncle here. We're not going to prevail against the Russians, much less the Russians and the Chinese. Why is it, Scott, that people don't know that the Russians have an advantage now that they never had before, and that we should stop tweaking the bear?
Look, Ray, I'm not in the intelligence business anymore. And so it's hard to know what that, but I take a look at the theories that come out from people who are connected, because of course we don't get to read the actual classified intelligence reports put out by the various missile analytical departments in the intelligence community. But there's a theory right now that we don't need to worry about the Oreshnik, because when the Russians started mass producing the Iskander and the Zircon and the Kinzhal, they maxed out their aluminum perchlorate capability, aluminum powder. And there's only that one factory in Novosibirsk, and the satellite imagery doesn't show that factory is expanded, and therefore there's this bottleneck. And so now they want to talk about building Oreshnik, but that's a bigger missile that's going to consume a lot more material, and therefore they can't do it. They're bluffing. And plus, we're taking a look at the YARS modernization program. There's all these competing factors out there for this limited quantity material. And I look at their analysis, and I have to respond by saying that you don't know. I mean, I can't get into sources and methods here, but I know what they used to be able to do in terms of collection. They maybe got better, but the Russians have not just sat there being a static target. They change up too. The Russian relationship with China is a completely different relationship, and so is the Russian relationship with North Korea. And both of those nations produce the various materials that they say are in short supply now, the raw materials. And all I know is that when I was in Russia, when I went to Novosibirsk, when I went to Ekaterinburg, of course, I didn't have access to the classified. There was just a lot of cranes. The Russians are building things. And there's probably facilities out there that we just don't have a clue what they're doing. I remember how shocked people were when Vladimir Solovyov went up to Victory Park on that complex north of Moscow, where they have this giant cathedral and this wonderful museum about World War II. But adjacent to it is a facility, and it turns out that's where they were sort of building up the Berezvesnik drone unit. But they did it there to avoid detection. But Solovyov made a mistake and did a video, and it allowed people to do geolocating, and there it is. My point is, I think Russia's full of places that are doing things right now that we just don't have a clue. I mean, the CIA is shut down. They don't have any eyes operable inside Russia, not like they used to. And, satellites are only good when they look at things. You look at a roof, you're looking at a roof. I mean, they ain't that good yet. They can't go through the roof. And
you can now with radar and infrared and multi-spectrum.
But I can also counter that just through simple heat layering and reflectors. I mean, but my point is I think the United States is flying blind on this, and I think there's also a lot of wishful thinking. We have been posturing the Russians as weak for so long that we can't accept the fact that the Russians are actually strong, that they can produce things in quantities and in quality that are beyond our imagination. They're getting ready. We talked about the drone revolution has made the tank obsolete. No. You know what Russia's been doing? They're building a tank that has built onto it modern advanced anti-drone technology. And they're assembling armor forces now that have this technology for breakout. Now, when and where that's going to happen, I don't know. People are saying it might come down through Chernihiv, maybe through Sumy. But the point is, the Russians are getting ready to reinvent the battlefield and using new technology, advanced technology that we're we're still trying to learn how to do basic drone warfare, where the Russians and Ukrainians are masters at this. But drone warfare has reached sort of the pinnacle of where it can go. Now the question is, do you just have static trench warfare, or do you come up with new tactics and new equipment like the Germans did, at the end? And the Russians are doing that right now. And we're just clueless. We're clueless about Russia.
Well, I thought that the Russian economy was falling apart. Scott, that's what the president said just the other day. Would the president be ill-informed on that, do you suppose?
I think the president is as
Not
ill-informed
good.
as it gets. I also think this president doesn't care what other people tell him. I think the president gets something in his mind. Look, this is a man who basically said international law doesn't matter. The
Only my
Constitution
morals.
matters. The only thing that matters is my morality. The man who was on more airplanes with Epstein than anybody else, his morality.
Great.
Sorry I went there. I apologize for that.
No, I mean, that's relevant. Any final comments, gentlemen, before we head out? Ray.
Just, I'm glad that over the next couple of weeks, February 5 is when New START expires. I see that. Maybe, Scott, I'd ask you if you agree with this. If there's no response, or if there's a negative response from the President of the United States to do this simple thing of just renewing for one more year the quantitative limits of New START, then I think Then I think Putin will finally have to say, "All right, bring the fat lady in here. It's all over. No more arms control." Do you agree with that?
Look, Ray, I'm going to try and be optimistic and agree with you. My only problem is that this defense budget, while we've been talking disarmament and all that stuff, the American nuclear weapons enterprise has been positioning to get funding for the mass production of plutonium pits. And that's budgeted now. There's money in the budget. They're doing this. They're building the pits. Why would you build new, and we're talking thousands of plutonium pits? Why would you do this if you're agreeing to caps? I think the president's already made his mind up. I think that he's already, he's just not going to give it away. But, when he said the other day, they said New START's expiring. He said, so it expires. So
This will sound trite, but I believe that a Nobel Peace Prize is very much in Trump's distorted mind. I mean,
he's going to steal it from some Venezuelan chick.
It sounds adolescent to suggest this, but if he doesn't say yes to renewing those limits on New START, I think that may only disqualify him. I do think that's an element in his thinking about such things, as odd as that may seem to the rest of us rational people.
You don't think kidnapping Maduro and getting ready to preemptively launch a war against Iran would disqualify?
No, I know those Nobel Peace Prize folks. All they need to do is,
As long as they support it, right? As long as they support the wars.
They can do it.
As long as the Peace Prize Committee supports the wars, it's okay, I guess. I mean, Obama did get one after all, right? All right, everybody. This was a great show. It was a huge show. I think it was very, very fair and very interesting. That I'm so glad so many people came out to hear both you, Scott and Ray. I have your websites. I have Scott's Substack. I have Ray, your website. I also have Scott's YouTube channel in the video description, so you can check out all of their work. Hit the like button before you go, everyone. There was a lot of generosity, new members. New people who gave super chats. So I'm just putting them on the screen so you all know that it is appreciative. Yeah, until next time, everyone, we're gonna head out. We've been on for a couple hours.
Can I say one thing real quick?
Please do.
It's just a personal thing.
Of course.
I have been what do they call it? Debanked by the U.S. government. Today, the U.S. My longtime bank, Citizens Bank, 26 years, informed me that they were just unilaterally shutting down our banking relationship. And doing the research on it, it appears that they were responding to a suspicious activity report from the U.S. government. There is no suspicious activity. And you dig into that, you find out that the FBI does this as a form of harassment to get a bank to initiate, then they debank you. And so if you could go to scottritter.com and go to the donation page and make a little donation. I'm not asking for a lot, but they basically, all my money disappeared in my bank. I don't have any money left. And you know, we'll work it out. I'm not panicked, but normally I would just let it slide. But, you know, sort of a big deal. Mid-month bills. Anyways, that's all I would ask. Is, if you guys could spare a penny or two to help me get through this until I figure out what the hell's going on, I'd appreciate it.
Everyone, go to Scott's Substack, hit the donation button there. Do that. That's ridiculous. Well, on that note, everybody, just know that this does have consequences, and you know, we all have to stand and take care of each other and stand with each other. So until next time, everyone, I will be back again soon. I'll let you know when I am. I believe it's Thursday night, but I'll let you know the time and the guests. Thank you, everyone. We're going to head out together. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Scott.